of what we need to do. Roll call. Florence.
Flo is here.
Are you here? Janet?
Here.
Jean?
Here.
Helen?
Here.
Ronald? Ronald?
Ron is not here.
Richard? Richard?
I don't see Dick either.
I'm here. Ernie? Mark? Mark?
Mark is not here.
Melinda?
Present.
Thank you. Lenora?
I don't
Lenora?
see. Oh, Lenora is not either.
Hazel?
Present.
Thomas?
Here.
Paulette?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, did Ronald or Richard show up?
Nope. And we need to
Okay.
call Beth.
What?
Beth is here.
Oh, Beth.
Yep, and
Well, why
Elaine.
is it-
Elaine also?
Oh, I didn't show your name up on the members list. I'm sorry.
Yep, I'm gonna have to get you an updated roster for sure, Ernie. I've realized that. My apologies. And then Angelique will be coming late.
You're making me look bad here in front of the inspector.
Nope, that's
My
that's
first
on me.
real-
You have an outdated. Yep, you have an outdated list. That's
Yeah,
totally
well,
on.
that's all right. He's looking at me, kid. All right, can we get does anybody make a motion to adopt today's agenda or have some item they would like to add to the agenda?
I think Christina mentioned that I asked for an addition to the agenda, so you have it?
And
And
you
the
are
addition
who,
to the
please?
agenda
This is
is
Paulette.
conversation. Yeah,
Paulette,
the addition
thank
to the
you,
agenda is a
Paulette. And what would you
conversation.
like to add?
What is it that I want to add?
Please.
To revisit, March 12th, 2020, the date that we last met in person and we passed a resolution, which was sent on to the Department of Communications, regarding the pandemic.
Okay. Christine, where do you see that being inserted in our agenda?
After our presenters are finished, we have 2 of them today.
Okay, so your item number 6. Anyone else have an item for today's agenda? Okay, can I get an adoption of the revised agenda, please?
I move that we adopt the agenda as revised.
Second.
Thank you, and a
Okay.
second.
Second.
Okay, please say your name so that our recorder can get the names and who is doing things for us. Thank you very, very much. Now we have the acceptance of the last minutes. Do I hear any discussion about the last minutes? No? All right. Do I get a motion to adopt the minutes?
Tom Weiss, move to accept.
Jean,
Thanks,
second.
Tom. All right, they've been moved in a second. So I'll let Christine introduce our speakers. And Christine, will you watch the time, or what do you? How do we want to do
Sure,
that?
I can do that.
That's
And
it.
All right.
so
That's why we have a secretary now.
Yeah, that's true.
What?
We have Inspector Sean McGinty. Thank you so much for joining us today, Inspector. He'll give a brief update if you haven't been able to follow the updates that the city provides on their Facebook page. I do want to remind that you don't have to have a Facebook account You can go on the city's Facebook to check out those videos. And if you have any questions for the inspector, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them the best that he can.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. Am I correct in you want some updates on Operation Safety Net and things around the trial? Is that mainly what you'd like to hear today?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. And I'll just give you kind of the overview, and then I can answer more specifics if that helps. We're currently it's a 4-phase operation. The first phase is what we're in right now, which is jury selection. On the 8th, there was several large-scale gatherings, some protests, whatever you want to call them, downtown. So we kind of locked up our gates and our perimeter that we have set around the temporary 3rd precinct, which is the City of Lakes building downtown. Since then, there's been no other scheduled things. Our gates are wide open. Our front door is available to serve the public. And we view that this will probably be consistent and through whenever they finish jury selection. Judge Cahill has been pretty emphatic that March 29th will be the start of the trial, regardless of how quickly the jury is impaneled. So that is when we would move into what we're going to be calling phase 2. While testimony is going, that's been scheduled for between 3 and 4 weeks, at which time, as soon as the case is moving towards final and closing statements and the case is given to the jury, we move into phase 3, and I think that's where a lot of the planning and where you'll see the outside law enforcement agencies come in. The National Guard will be coming in probably shortly just before closing arguments. The second layer of fortification for all the precincts will go in. Street closures will happen. All of those things, and it's all kind of fluid based on when the trial is. As I think we've seen from TV, if you've been watching any of it, they really go along at their own pace, and that can be very slow at times. So a lot of these things are fluid. We're planning for approximate dates, but certain points in the trial will trigger when the next phase goes. We're planning for a 10-day operation after the case has gone to the jury, after which time the phase 4 is demobilization, where the National Guard troops would leave. Our outside agencies that we'd sign mutual aid agreements would leave. The barricades and some of the fortifications would come down, and that's a process in the end. What we really are trying to tell the public is, even though we're doing this and we have trained our own, we're calling them mobile field forces, which are they've been had extensive training in crowd control. We've trained up a unit for that to assist in different areas, but there will be no interruption in the 911 service, which is different than what happened last May and early June, where basically all of our resources were focused in a few different places. And unfortunately, we just weren't able to get out into the community. And I know the community felt abandoned and alone out there, which was very scary. So we have planned that there won't be any interruption in regular 911 service, no matter which phase we are in. We will have 12 to 14 officers assigned to the day watch, which is a few more than we actually have currently. And the shifts will be split in 12-hour shifts, 7 to 7 and 7 to 7. The night shift will have roughly 16 or 17 officers, and they will all be dedicated to 911 response in the 3rd precinct. Those numbers will not change unless something catastrophic happens where it's all hands on deck and we need to be somewhere. So I want to assure the public, and every meeting I go to, we will have stand-up 911 service. Ambulance service will operate even if we have to escort them, and fire and rescue will also be available all during that time. So there will be dedicated resources in all 5 precincts that will maintain our 911 police coverage for the entire city. What that looks like in some of the neighborhoods, some of the extra things that we'll have, there are other smaller SWAT teams and strike teams that will be in marked Minneapolis cars, And if they're not required to be doing something related to the trial or a disturbance that may pop up, they'll be put on extra patrol in the neighborhoods, really as I anticipate the mayor will declare a curfew during parts of this. But what I want to assure the public is that the role of the MPD and the National Guard will be coming out with us at some different points is not really an enforcement role as much as just a deterrent from the behaviors we saw last time that were so destructive. The MPD and the National Guard aren't going to be out looking for people that are, standing on their sidewalks at 9 o'clock after a curfew. We just want to reassure the public that we're out here, that we're not going to tolerate the burning and the looting and some of the crazy things that happened in parks and different areas of the city last time. The city and the chief have been very clear about acceptable behaviors, to include, gathering, protests, First Amendment rights, and we are not going to tolerate looting, burning, damage to property, throwing rocks at anybody, and things like that. So they're trying to send a clear message of what's acceptable and that we will support and keep you safe while you do it, and what is not as an acceptable behavior anywhere in the city. But I just want to be very clear, and I know it's scary for different things in the city, and nobody wants to see military vehicles out and about in your city where you live. But we need to remember that these men and women that are coming here are our neighbors, they're our doctors, they're our friends, and people we sit next to in movie theaters and church. So they are not there to be an occupying force. They're simply there to let the public know that we're here this time, and we're not going to abandon you, and we're not going to allow the city to burn, and that we have a plan to be out there. So that's what we're really trying to communicate. It isn't an enforcement thing. It isn't. We're really out there just wanting to kind of take away, even if it's just a small part of the anxiety I know a lot of people are feeling inside the city, residents, business owners, cops, everybody. I think we're all feeling that, and that's very fair. So that's kind of the overview. For me in the 3rd Precinct, we are also tasked with naming about 75 different intersections or areas that experienced a lot of the looting and the fires and different things last year, and we made quite an extensive list, and that's the list that the extra patrols that will be going around are going to be going to those areas to maintain the business corridors, parks, the medical facilities, Alina and our hospitals that are there. They've been through a lot this past month too. We're really working with our partners to make sure that their services and what they provide for the 3rd Precinct aren't interrupted too by disturbances. So it's an extensive plan. The guy that's in charge of the plan planned the Super Bowl, the All-Star game, the Final Four, all of those things were here. I think we're prepared, and I use the phrase, we're prepared for the worst, but we are truly hoping for the best, that people can get out there, express their rights as Americans, but that we do it in a positive manner, that we aren't hurting each other anymore than is already there. So that's kind of the main goal of Safety Net. It's a broad overview. I can't really go into more specifics. I guess one more note: the National Guard, when they are out, have to be attached to MPD. So you would see probably 2 of the military-style vehicles along with a fully marked MPD squad. They are not allowed to just go out and patrol on their own. So they'll be out with us no matter what's happening out in the community. So just to assure people that, they aren't going to go into an area that they have never dealt with and don't know. I mean, these are people from all over the state. They don't know what Little Earth is, and they don't know what East Phillips is, and they don't, they just know it's a street and we're out here. So I think it's a really good decision to have them with people that are familiar with the area, know the demographics of where you're going and what's happening, just to be better informed. So that's kind of a general overview of what I have, and happy to answer any questions you have about this or anything else 3rd Precinct related.
Well, I have my hand up, and this is Ernie. I'm the chair, and I encourage everyone to put themselves on mute, except our speaker, and I encourage you to raise your hand if you have a question That way, Christine, who's helping us, can call on us. And I do have a question. I had my hand raised. This is going to be a demonstration. Is it a demonstration in such that they will get a permit and go through that process? I understand permits come with an acceptance, and you know where they're going to be marching. I understand that a permit comes with someone in charge, that it is your contact. I understand that a permit also, someone has to guarantee any kind of disruption in an area. I put it that way, I guess. I don't know. Are they going to be asked to have a permit? The date and time would be kind of fluid, but you would have some idea of where people wanted to be.
Well, not, I guess I would have to look into that. My best guesstimation is that these are not going to be permitted protests in nature. And I'm not sure the groups would abide by that anyway. I can tell you Monday, while they publish what they're going to do on like a Facebook, I don't believe that they have sought any permits for any of the marches, walks, or things such as like Monday, where they were kind of in the street in front of the U.S. building there, right across from the government center. That'd be something I'd have to look into through the city, and I'd be glad to do that. But I'm guessing that the answer is no, that they aren't seeking permits. They're simply agreeing to have a protest. Usually they'll say that they're going to be peaceful and everything. And a lot of the groups really are. I mean, some of the bigger groups that you see in the Monday group that was out there was, other than blocking the street that they were in and marching a bit, were wholly peaceful and just, walked around and did their business. Normally, pre-George Floyd, we would probably have escorted them using bikes and different things to keep them safe through the intersections. They really aren't, for obvious reasons, seeking our assistance here, and we've respected that. So it's the best I can answer the question now, Ernie. It's a good question, but like I said, I'm guessing no, that they haven't. The city hasn't asked, and they haven't offered to permit any of their protests.
Well, I think the city should ask. We are a city, and we have rules that we abide by, and we have a way to run our city. And if we want our city to be our city, we need to at least ask. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Christine, do you see anyone else with a question?
Yep, I do. Jean has her hand up.
Thank you.
Hi, Inspector McGinty. You and I had a phone call a couple weeks ago. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Thank you. I wanted to, if you'll allow me, our last meeting, myself and a couple others kind of spoke to the anxiety of the neighborhoods and the dedication this all is toward the downtown area, and not much language or discussion to the neighborhoods. And as you may recall, I'm in the Longfellow neighborhood, or actually Greater Longfellow. Getting some feedback, sorry. And I know others in our neighborhood are, or others in our community are also a little concerned about not feeling like we're being recognized and what the plans are for the neighborhoods. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I added in the extra planning that we've had with the intersections. Certainly Longfellow, many of our neighborhoods along all the business corridors, Franklin, Lake Street, some up at the higher 40 end of Chicago, parks, particular neighborhoods. I know in Longfellow, several parks, had people running through them with rifles, different things, really crazy things that were happening. And that's why we've used the addition of these smaller, what we're calling, strike teams. They're teams of 8 or 10 that are going to be out on extra patrol in all of the neighborhoods. We're going to be visible for the neighborhoods. And like I said, we can't all of us are experiencing the anxiety of what's coming here, because we truly just don't know. It could be nothing, and it could be, it could be everything again. So I want to assure the neighborhoods and the business corridors all throughout the city, whether it's, the north end in Phillips, or you go down by Lake Calhoun, we're going to be visible. We're going to be out on patrol with dedicated 911 resources, which is much different than last time, where we were really, we had to usually put 4 cops with a fire team just to go put out one fire, because they were getting shot at and, getting assaulted every time they were trying to put out a fire. So we've planned for that. That's why we've dedicated 911 resources, dedicated extra patrol using the National Guard and using our own folks when they're not having to do something trial related, and really just be out and be visible in the neighborhoods. It's really what we have to offer. Most of our law enforcement partners that are going to be here on mutual aid will be at building security. So everything isn't really just focused downtown. We just happen to be in a temporary building two blocks down from the courthouse. We would have preferred to be out, at 2633 Minnehaha. That didn't work out. But we do need to protect the buildings. It's kind of a core infrastructure thing. We need a place to work out of. And so while it appears a lot of that, resources are downtown, there's 3 or 4 different entities that paid for that. Hennepin County protected their own building. The city hall was pretty much boarded up anyway due to construction and rehabbing of the building, but they did add, some perimeters, because, the mayor is in there and 911 dispatch is in there. Our building, even though it's a temporary building, the 1st precinct drew a lot of attention last time, 5th precinct. So we have to protect the buildings, but it appears like that. But myself and a lieutenant and 10 National Guard and 5 Rochester police officers will be the only ones in the building. You'll have more cops that are out on the street patrolling than we will have on those buildings and in those perimeters. So I assure you it looks that way, but I promise that we'll be out there, we'll be in the community, we'll be able to respond to the calls as they come up, the calls for service and the emergency calls related to this. But with the court and all the hearings and everything being downtown, they did have to put kind of a premium focus on those downtown businesses. And several businesses around us have also spent a lot of money. The federal building put up their own barriers. The Wells Fargo building right across from me fenced off their whole plaza and boarded up their windows. The US Bank building is boarded up the first floor windows. So a lot of people are putting a lot of resources in to try to kind of firm up and discourage what happened last time. Does that answer your question, Jean?
It does. It does. I just wonder if you would elaborate just a step further, in particular on 911 calls, especially for the citizenry who see something, hear something. And you did address that last May, it just kind of imploded and 911 was gone. But there sounds like there's maybe a tiered system of what should be 911, what should be elsewhere. If we're hearing something in our alley, as an example, is that still a 911 call?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And I cover this a lot when I'm at community meetings. The only way to get the MPD, to respond to a call is you have to call 911. We don't really have non-emergency so much. You can call 311, but that's usually an email, and it isn't gonna, if you need immediate response or you need a police officer, 911 is the only way to get one dispatched, and that will not change during any phase of the trial. We have public facing 911 that will be fully staffed with supervisors, 10 to 12, at least 12 cops per shift. And then extras, the extra people that are going to be out in that community. So 911 response will not change, and depending on the severity is how we get dispatched. And I always tell people it all depends what you tell the dispatcher when you get a hold of them, because when you're calling, you get a hold of a call taker. That's who you tell your first thing to, like, hey, there's someone in our alley and it looks like you're trying to break into cars. and if you tell them, it looks like they're currently doing it, they're doing it right now. Well, the dispatcher's going to put that and label that. They determine which calls are call priorities 1, 2, or 3. And then we just get dispatched, and we're basically told where to go. The dispatch kind of triages calls and dispatches based on level of emergency. So if you see 2 people fighting in the alley, that's going to be a priority 1. We're going to get there and get dispatched within a couple of minutes. If you say, hey, I just saw a fight, but they ran away, that might take 25 minutes or a half an hour. They're going to prioritize that lower. So I always try to tell people, you really have to communicate, the level of emergency or what you're seeing, because the call taker passages it on to a dispatcher who then dispatches a police officer. So you're a couple layers from how we get sent out. It doesn't, just immediately pop up on a cop screen and we go there. There's a process that happens down in that MACC. So if you see it and you want a police officer there, you have to call 911. And that's how we get out there. But really be communicative. All I really ask is to help my cops out, that we give really good descriptions of people. We don't want to discriminately have to jump out on 10 people. I mean, it'd be really helpful if it's, hey, it's a guy with a red hat and purple pants. As specific as we can be. We need to be laser focused with the resources we have, but also to be fair and equitable in our law enforcement. So I really ask that people, don't be afraid to call. It's not, you're not being bad or evil if you call 911, but let's be specific and make sure we're getting the right people that we, see doing the behaviors that we're wondering why they're doing those in our neighborhoods. But I assure you that the 911 will be just like it is now, all public facing. You just have to communicate that, and we'll be there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question, Jean. It's a great question.
So there's 3 folks. The first one is Janet, if you still had a question. The second would be Beth, and the third is Paulette.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay. This is more of a information kind of thing, is that our little area, which is the north end of Powderhorn Park, actually have a 20-person citizen security force that we had during the uprising, and that we can easily bring back together again. That we also have sight lines on the top of our buildings that really have a good view of most of the area. Really, we feel like we're really safer than we've ever been. I don't know if anyone's called. There's been a couple instances of carjackings and stuff, I think, where somebody's called police, but it's been very rare that we've called police. We generally, even then we had one assaulted that happened, that the neighbors were there right away and stopped it, and nothing happened because of that. The person who was the intended victim wasn't injured at all. So we stopped a few things like that from happening. We're operating as our own police force fairly effectively. So I don't know. That's just, I think that's true of other places like Little Earth as well, that they've been doing this. So maybe you can concentrate where people actually are afraid, and yeah, that's
That's a great, I'm always happy when I hear that neighborhoods have banded together. We've always wanted that to happen. Keep an eye out for each other. I see the yard signs. That's very positive. I think some of the negative things we saw last time were people walking around with, long guns strapped to their chest, and doing different things. And we did experience some of that in Little Earth, where they were open carrying. Currently, the county and city attorney are trying to figure out, the Minnesota Supreme Court just recently came down with a ruling on what it means for the carry permit that people have. And the Supreme Court has found that you're really not allowed to carry long guns in public. And so we're kind of dealing through that. So while I encourage you guys to keep a lookout for your neighbors, I really discourage the carrying of long guns or weapons. You are allowed to carry a handgun with a permit, no matter what. That's the law, and I respect that, and I defend everyone's right to do that. But we really did see some disturbing things, neighbors calling on neighbors if they didn't know exactly who they were. They're carrying long guns, and really, those are the things I would discourage. But I'm great. It's great to hear that you've done that for the north end of Powderhorn Park, and Little Earth has taken some of that on themselves. I encourage it. But I also encourage, let's be smart about how we're behaving out there while we do it. And we're always there to back you up. If it seems dangerous, please just give us a call. We don't need neighbors getting hurt. We're happy to try and come out and get there and help. So thank you for doing that. And if you need us, we'll be there.
Janet, did you still have more? Your hand is still up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. We'll go on to Beth now.
I might have lowered it and raised it again accidentally.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, now.
Beth, go ahead.
Inspector, as I'm sure you know, some of our communities, when they see officers come into their neighborhoods, feel a great sense of safety, while others feel it can be somewhat of a threatening presence. And I'm just curious if there has been communication ahead of time with communities so they feel a stronger sense of partnership with our law enforcement officers.
Yeah, that's another great question. A lot of the things that we've had that were kind of public facing, obviously we've had to kind of scale back just with, the attrition we've had. What I can assure you from the officers that are still working for me in the 3rd precinct, these are the officers that want to be here. They've went through, about 70% of my staff is new to the 3rd precinct. Some of them are the younger officers. They're out there doing a great job every day. But I also understand the anxiety that does present for some. But what I would encourage people to do is to come out. We're going to be visible. It'd be great to see you too. If you want to flag down a car and have a conversation, I know the cops and the men and women that work for me are very professional. We'd love to try to, start trying to gain back some of the confidence from our neighborhoods, especially the ones that are feeling that way. That they might be negative when they see the police. We're willing to start that. It may not be the time to do it in the middle of these trials, but we're working hard every day to try to get back there. The council's approved getting a few more cops in here. There's some more applications that we've got quite a few applicants. So I think as we build back, I think that you'll find we'll start trying to put those community engagement pieces back into the police department. And they are important. I go to every meeting I'm invited to, and I always try to get out. I'm fine having the hard conversations. I get it that we've done damage, and we need to build back from that. So I can tell you that the men and women that are left here are ready to do that and follow the mission of the chief. And I think I believe in Rondo very much. So I think we can get there. This time is going to be probably a little more hectic and busy till we finish the trials, but I assure you we're working hard every day to try to get back and gain back, house by house, block by block, trying to build that trust back with a lot of those neighborhoods. So we're working hard to do that.
Thank you. Paulette?
Inspector, I live in the 5th police precinct, and I'm off the 3rd police precinct. I'm sure you're familiar with demolition sites, truck reconstruction zones. The fire was just recently demolished. The point is, are you looking at making sure that debris, bricks, all the other paraphernalia that could be used as projectiles are cleared, covered, and otherwise not available? Because Wells Fargo building is a huge reconstruction demolition zone, and if you have some time now, maybe connect those contractors and make sure that what's out there that can be cleared should be cleared.
Okay, so Paulette, you were breaking up. I can summarize Inspector McGinty because I'm pretty sure I know what she was asking. Or did you understand?
If you could paraphrase, I think there was the questions about, last time a lot of things were kind of left out for people to use as improvised weapons. Is that kind of what she was asking about?
Yep, absolutely. With all the debris, especially with the past destruction of property, et cetera.
Yeah.
And her suggestion, I feel it was a suggestion or a question, is connecting, especially with the contractors who are trying to restore some of the properties, just to, if there's any effort to try and mitigate as much as possible, having folks have access to debris, piping and boulders and rocks and bricks, etc.
Where is it, by the old precinct, was she asking, or just in general around the city where people are working?
She used the example of Wells Fargo and the rebuild there, but I'm pretty sure that whether it's Wells Fargo, downtown, along the corridors, or anywhere, that just thinking about mitigating the problem.
The Hexagon bar is not fenced. It's a huge pit. It's got lots of bricks in it. You're obviously familiar with it.
Yeah, there's lots of areas throughout the city that are just still in rubble, if you will, and accessible. If community really wanted to get in and use the debris, they sure could.
Yeah, it's a great question. I know for sure that in the areas around, where we are, there's currently a hotel being built right kind of in the alley to the south of the City of Lakes building, and in different places strategically, garbage cans, things have been moved. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I do not think there's a citywide concerted effort, for specific places like the Hexagon, and things where there's just bricks. And I think we're kind of anticipating a lot of the, at least a lot of the social, the gatherings or protests or things will be downtown focused, just because that's where the trial is. I know some people have expressed some concern where the old 3rd precinct was, if that'll be another gathering point. We will patrol that building just like we do any of the other city properties, and calls for service. We aren't going to station people there to be a focus. I don't think that is a wise move, but I don't think it's been a citywide, effort. It's certainly something I can communicate up to Commander Gerlicher, who is the incident commander for this, and maybe push that through our joint information system to get out to residents. If you have a place that is obvious they've just delivered 3 pallets of bricks, that might be something we want to think about, either fencing in or getting in a trailer of some kind. But as a city, I just don't know that we could hit all of the areas where people are trying to build and or pipes are. But I could certainly talk to Commander Gerlicher and see if that's some kind of information we could put out, or if they have, if people can call into a center and say, hey, here's what I'm noticing over here. And it's at least something we could go and check out. If that kind of answers Janet's question.
Take a proactive look at that. I think you should take a proactive look at construction zones. They all have permits. They all have. So what the contractors are. Send out an email. Ask them to tarp everything if they can.
Okay.
Don't wait to happen.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Paulette, the resources I have, I'm not sure that that I would be able to affect it that much. That's why I would try to go through the commander, and then try to work through, like you said, the inspections department and different entities in the city that may be able to kind of resource that out. We're really kind of busy just doing the 911 stuff. I appreciate the question, and I know the exact people I would have to ask these questions to, and I'd be sure to do that for you. And I assure you, we're all trying to work hard. We want the best for this city, and we certainly it's a great idea, and I will definitely go through the right channels to see if what we can put in place to check that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector. I want to just acknowledge that Councilmember Schrader is here to have a conversation with us. Is there any other questions for Inspector McGinty? And maybe Councilmember Schrader has a question. I don't know. But welcome, Councilmember Schrader.
Thanks, Dan. No, I'm good. The inspector and I have an ongoing meeting, so we're good on that.
Okay.
Every Monday. So I'll probably sign off if that's all right, then everybody can talk to the council member without the policeman on the screen and everything. So it was great to talk to you all. You have great questions, and like I always say, my
Well,
email.
we're safer.
Well, we're getting back there. We'll get there, Ernie, and we're working hard at that every day.
You are. You're great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Inspector. I
all
appreciate
of
your
your
time.
Thanks so much, Inspector. And if anyone has questions that they just didn't think of or anything, I can certainly reach out to Inspector McGinty or others to get those questions answered.
Yep.
That's
My
a great
email is
idea.
public facing with the city, and you know, I answer all my emails and phone calls. So I appreciate y'all very much, and be safe out there, and give me a call if you need anything. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
See you, Inspector.
Thanks.
See you, council member.
Councilmember Schrader, thank you so much for taking time to stop in, say hi, give a couple updates, things from your ward, as well as the committees you serve on. I have a feeling we'll have some questions for you, possibly, so I'll just turn it right over to you.
Great. Well, in the interest of that, I will make sure to be really, really brief to make sure we have tons of time for questions. But for those that don't know me,
Councilman Schrader, just one moment. I remind you as chair to put your on mute. And if you have a question, please raise your hand and have a question. Be sure that you have a question for the councilman. We will be putting his information in the sent out right after this. If you have something that you want to talk to him personally about, then that. But this is, if you do have a question, please raise your hand, and thank you. And I'm sorry to interrupt the councilman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie, for the reminder.
oh yeah, good
And
reminder. Thanks.
can we have Councilman Schrader on the big screen?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Good.
Make it sound so important.
Yeah, well, we want. There you are.
Well, it's good to see you all. So I'm Jeremy Schrader. I'm the city council member for Ward 11. I'm glad to see my appointee is here. At least I can see him in the participants list. Just want to give you a couple updates. Something for those of you that kind of live down in the area. I represent South Central. It's working and making sure I'm representing all my constituents, including seniors, has been a really big priority for me. It's something that my office has worked to have kind of the first senior fair that we were able to have that last year. And what really, drove us to do that is, we reached out to AARP. We asked, what can we be doing as a ward office and as a city much better? And that really led to some great conversations. It led to learning more about a lot of the systems that are out there. And what was fairly obvious right off the go, while the city and county and state has resources for seniors, a lot of times they're very specific to individual issues. Like we don't really have a comprehensive answer for what for people's lives. And so the senior fair was really kind of that first step that happened right before the pandemic. So we're looking to have that start up again once we are through all of this and can meet in person again. But it was a really good way to really get everybody together and to start talking about what kinds of things the city could be doing better for making sure it's a city for everybody. I think what I wanted to talk to you all about and kind of get some pass along compliments as well as get feedback on as I was able to take part in the AARP's Age Friendly Minnesota conference that they just had. I was one of the speakers, and thanks to the good work of Tina and all the kind of the good work that the city has been doing, I was able to talk about kind of our age-friendly plan for the city. And it was really interesting because I was on there with a couple other cities, and most of them are just starting. Like they are just starting to have their own, committees on aging to really start to highlight those issues. And for Minneapolis, we're a couple years in and actually looking at the next iteration of that. And to be able to talk about that's the first step is having that committee and having the feedback loop of being able to really listen and to really hold yourselves accountable. But then you need to go beyond that. You need to make sure that that's part of everything you do. The example I can give you is I'm the chair of zoning and planning. And so as we're having new construction being built, being able to have staff as well as kind of everyone involved talk about, universal design and what it means to make buildings that are accessible to everybody, to make sure street design is thinking about, everybody, whether that is someone that is taking the bus, someone that will need a place to sit, thinking about this year long of like, what is this going to look like if we aren't able to clear the snow? And by that meaning, where do you put that snow? When it happens, to make sure that people that are walking, or if they're not able and they're in a scooter, how do you make that accessible for a city? It's nice to have a committee, but that needs to go somewhere, and that needs to mean something. And so we got a lot of really positive feedback from the other cities on there, just to say, we still as a city have a long way to go, and they were just starting it. So it was helpful for them to kind of think of what is their 5-year plan. If they're starting the committee now, what does it look like to incorporate feedback and to really have this work into their city process? So I can stop there. I do have a habit of being really, really brief. So I'm happy to talk about other things that the city's doing. I think there has been, the one updates I will say, so the budget every single year, our funding for down here, Nokomis Healthy Seniors is the program that, it's not in my area, but it helps a lot of my constituents. We have to fight for that funding. I was really excited this year to not have to do that fight. It was actually in the budget and also included for consistent funding. Like the first fight that I have to do is frankly just making sure that money is in there. But 2 is to try and make it not be one time. It's until this year, it's always been one-time funding. So that means every single year we have to continue to fight for it. And this year they put it into ongoing. So that's a big step forward. I will say, be really frank about that, is once it starts to be ongoing, we can ask for more. Like it's not enough money, but it is something that we've always had to fight just to have the basics. So see a number of hands coming up, so I can stop there and start answering questions.
I saw Paulette first and then Jean second. Go ahead, Paulette.
Yeah, coming up to the anniversary of the year with the pandemic, I'm curious, as far as zoning and planning, what is the city doing to address the issue of ventilation in new construction? Ventilation in new
That's a great question. It's not one that we brought up. In all honesty, it's not something that we've highlighted specifically. It's not something we've seen. I haven't seen any extra attention to it. Like I appreciate you bringing it up, because it is something. The city just built a brand new building with open concept, and we're really now starting to think about like, okay, well, open concept doesn't work real well in the age of COVID. Like, how are we going to redesign that building? I would say that's while it hasn't come up, I think that's still something that's going to be the question in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Jean, I know your hand was up.
Yes. Hi, Jean DeMarais. I'm in Howe neighborhood.
Okay.
And actually a few blocks south of Lake Street and the 3rd Precinct building. And so kind of a twofold question globally. What are we going to do, and at what time is it time to tear down the boards and the graffiti and encourage building owners to complete their tear downs and start their rebuilds? And then secondly, I'm wondering if you have any ideas or thoughts about the 3rd Precinct building and its state of affairs, and whether that will be destroyed and when, and what will go on there.
Sure. I should say that the church I belong to is Holy Trinity, so it's in that neighborhood as well. It's about half a block from the 3rd Precinct. So outside of my professional life, like I know that my congregation is very involved in what that. Maybe I'll answer the second question first.
Okay.
So I don't have any thoughts for that building. I think what I am looking toward is, first and foremost, the community in that area for what that can be. And because it's at this point, you can't unbundle those nights of uprising from that building. and that's really, really difficult. So it's something that it's at this point, it's a city building. You know, it's a city building now with a history. So at this point, there's no plans for it, but it is something to be thoughtful of taxpayer dollars and all of that. Like, we need to be able to reuse that or do something with it. And right now, there's no plans for that. On your second,
So can I just insert very quickly? So staying as is in its state of disrepair?
We don't want it in disrepair. Just to kind of not to transition to the first question, but to answer part of it a little bit. And I'm happy to have like a follow up too, because the priority is really making sure the city can get the businesses and buildings on Lake Street up and running. There's been a lot of issues with, you know, how do we use the city processes to clean those up and to get things kind of moving. Most recently, so while I'm chair of zoning and planning, we don't have a zoning and planning committee during the pandemic. So that's all been folded into a bigger committee. We just heard we just approved funds to go kind of above and beyond, just to clear out some of those wreckage. And it's unfortunately taken that long. Like, we will have to make sure that they can get the permits, but two, that they have the funds to be able to do that. And it has been something just because of the extent of the damage. It has been a really slow process.
Okay. So the boarding and the graffiti and some murals, is that just for the time being and into the future, that's just how it's going to be?
That I don't know. I mean, that I would be checking with the council member for the area of what they're going to do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I don't know if Paulette had a follow-up. Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions for Councilmember Schrader? Beth.
Yes, hi. So I'm sure that you're aware that the silver tsunami, they're calling it, is coming. And so there'll be more seniors in communities than young people for the first time ever. I guess my question is, how do we best on this committee support you?
Oh, I appreciate that question. I think bringing awareness to everything that's going to take. Like, I've heard about the silver tsunami for 20 years now. And I would say the first time I heard that, I was actually working for a labor union that represented in-home healthcare workers, specifically working on seniors. And it's something that until you're involved in that work or a senior yourself, you don't think about some of the common sense things. And I can use some of the, like, universal design, for example. If you're using universal design, you're designing for everybody. But that said, you're also making it so much, like, the way you're impacting somebody's life is a big deal. And so being able to talk about, you know, what your lives are like, what the challenges are for things that, you know, people, you maybe yourself wouldn't have thought about 10 years ago, and being able to advocate for that. I think the other way to help is really be able to have those harder conversations. I would say that like the 2040 is one that is a hard issue for folks. It is a like, one, you know, the city had to make a plan to give to Met Council, like, we're obligated under law. But one of our goals was to make sure that we had have a framework that we could build, you know, more affordable housing, more senior housing. And it's one of those that how do you advocate for change in a way that really talks about preserving the things you like and being able to talk about what needs to be improved, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Paulette had her hand up, as did Hazel, and I'm not sure who was first. I think it was Paulette.
Just a quick comment. I hope you stay for the whole meeting and listen to our conversation about the letter that we sent to the city council and to the mayor a year ago, dealing with the pandemic and dealing with specifics as it relates to drive-through testing. At that time, it was a very big deal. and drive-throughs in general. So if your time permits, I hope you'll listen to that conversation and stay with our meeting.
Thank you, Paulette. Hazel?
Hi, I'm Hazel Tanner, and Councilman Schroeder. I'm in the 11th Ward. I never got a chance to meet you, but I'm one of the members on this committee. My question is, you say you're chairman of the zoning and planning, and we just want to piggyback on what you said prior. Members of that committee, do you have seniors on that committee that you're a chair of?
So it's made up of all city council members. And so I would say there are folks that are older than me. I'll leave it to them to say if they identify as a senior or not.
Okay, well, it'd be interesting to see with how old they are, because just as you said, 20 years ago, you heard about the silver tsunami. And so what you thought about 20 years ago, you have earned, have had more experience 20 years now, so we see some differences. So I'm thinking on your planning committee, if you don't have anybody who's probably near 70, in their 70s on there, maybe canvas or make sure that you get ideas from older people on that committee.
That's a great point, Hazel. And so the way that the planning process goes through is that there's first a planning commission will first see it, and then it will come to city council. I'm on both of those committees. On the planning commission, we do have some folks that would fit the definition that you said of, being over 70 and being seniors. Not a lot, but it is something we make sure we have that type of diversity there. It is a very specific committee too. Like, we also look for folks that have, architecture degrees, city planning degrees, but it is something right now we've been able to have somebody that is over, I believe they're over 70.
And it's a diverse group?
It is a very diverse group. It's very sorry if you heard a little shock in my voice. It is, like I said, it's a very specific group where we have to get architects and city planners. But right now we actually have quite a lot of diversity on it in every sense of the word.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Thank you.
No, thanks for the question.
Thank you, Hazel. Any other questions for Councilmember Schrader? Or comments or thoughts? Okay. I'm not even going to do the going once and twice. I do want to thank you, though, Councilmember Schrader, so much again for taking time out of your day. Yeah, if you are able to stay, that'd be great. If not, I can certainly update you on that conversation. I actually met with Sarah, your aide, today on a whole bunch of stuff, including COVID. So I will for sure keep you informed if you're not able to stay longer. So.
Well, thanks for that, and I appreciate the invitation. It's great to see everybody. I do need to get going, but check in with my staff, Tina, and also if you could send me the letter as well, just so I have it kind of front.
Yep,
when it came through.
Absolutely. I pulled it up just so I could do that for sure.
Right. Well, thanks everybody, and feel free to get my information out there. I'm happy to follow up.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. You.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Yep, I know. So in the spirit of, let's see, where am I? I'm trying to share my screen because
thank you, Christine, for taking us this far. Let's all give Christine a nice appreciative roar. And then as chair, I would like to say that if possible, with the agenda, we would have the contact info listed with our visitors, however they want to be contacted, either by phone or by email, but it's there so people can know that if they didn't get all of their questions answered or spoken, they could get in there. Anyone else have any comments they would like to make about our visitors? Again, raise your hand and we'll...
Angelique's hand is raised.
I see.
Oh, sorry, I was digging for the letter. Sorry, Angelique.
It's okay. I just think for the sake of communication that people should be allowed to finish their sentence before others interrupt, even if it's for the sake of order. Just please let people finish their word. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. So we have Paulette has something that she wanted to add to the agenda. Is this right, Christina? Is this time to?
Is this the right time to do it?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I can't put it up on the screen. Maybe you can, Christine. But I think, I don't know how many, yeah, there, thank you. I don't know how many people who are currently serving on the committee were serving on the committee a year ago. I think the majority of us are still here. I clearly remember the day. First of all, it was snowing. And that was the last time we met together face to face, but obviously we all understand how different this past year has been. And I believe that it's really important as a committee that we are able to communicate. Communication has become much more challenging in this last year, as we all know. But as far as I know, and Christina, you can update me if I'm incorrect, I don't know if this letter ever made it to the mayor and the city council. And at that time, we focused on testing. Well, testing is, that kind of came and it went, but the issue came up again. I served on the Shared Power Advisory Committee to the Minneapolis Department of Health, and the issue came up again with drugstores and banks that had drive-through facilities that had been damaged during the unrest, and that they be grandfathered in. That was another action, but it's a year. I think it's important to get an update. And so I would just like to know what the status is of this communication, and then more broadly, how this committee, and maybe Christina can go over the logistics of how this committee does communicate with the mayor and the city council when we choose to do that. So that's it.
Are you still all seeing the letter?
Yes.
Okay. Teams is not a good platform for stuff like this. If I want to see you, I have to get rid of the letter. If I want to put the letter up, I can't see anyone, including hands up. Angelique, do you have a question?
No, I do not. I'm sorry. I'm used to.
No worries, no worries. Just want to make sure.
Let me remove this. I apologize.
No, no problem at all. I'm glad you were able to join us. So there were several questions. So specifically to this letter, I have not had anybody follow back up with me as to what happened. I do know that it was presented to, so Inspector McGinty mentioned today the JIS, which is the Joint Information System. And what that is, and it's back up and running again, is that it is a collective of council, department heads, communications, et cetera, like a big group, and each has their own part. And the part is about addressing community concerns, how we get information out, et cetera, et cetera. I do know that this letter has gone there for it to get routed to the people who could actually do something about any of our concerns, which would have been the health department. I also do know that the health department did do some specific targeted outreach to Older adults, I will say a big focus was on what they call congregate living. So all of our public high rises and assisted living facilities, et cetera, is where the health department directed their attention to as far as testing. And now, of course, for vaccination, I can tell you that the health department has gone through, and I don't know how many they've accomplished so far, but they have disseminated vaccinations throughout. I'm gonna put out there more than a dozen, but I can find out the exact number to date. I mean, they're still doing this because it's quite a process in our public high rises. And how they're doing that is they're actually literally walking down the hall, and those who want to get vaccinated just come outside of their door and they get vaccinated. And then there's other folks then who stay behind to ensure that there's no ill effect from the vaccination. We're supposed to wait 15 minutes. So it's quite a process, as you can imagine. Each of these high rises has well over 100 to 200 residents within these buildings. So I will say that our health department has prioritized our aging population, and right now we are working specifically, and when I say we, I'm working with two of my colleagues as well as Fairview and the health department to come up with a strategy to do very specific vaccination clinics for our culturally specific, non-English, limited English speaking aging communities. So that would, of course, then entail folks who speak the language, who look like them, figuring out how to transport our older adults to these specific sites. So right now we're in the process of working through those logistics. Did I answer all the questions?
Well, that's wonderful, but I don't think it answered my question.
What was the question?
Is what has happened with this letter? It is 1 year, save 1 day since that letter went out. We have had no response. That's not acceptable. I think this committee needs to focus and be concerned on the mechanism for communicating with our charge is to advise the mayor and the city council. If a letter is languishing in the communications department for a whole year, we are being disabled.
So I can respond to that. When this letter came out, the entire world was scrambling on how the hell to handle this massive pandemic. It was declared a public health emergency. It was declared an actual national and global emergency, which also kicks in different processes. And those processes are in place so they can help not only address the issue, but when it comes to even financial support, which it became very clear quickly that was going to be needed. So there's processes. And so doing business as normal quit in March. That being said, there was a lot of conversation about how things move forward, how they get vetted, and when and how and who do they go to. And while we were trying to work through that in the city ourselves, I can't speak to other municipalities or organizations, the murder of George Floyd happened. And that created a whole another set of conversations, sensitivities, etc. So I'm sorry if you feel slighted, Paulette.
It's not a personal issue. It's not that I feel slighted. This is a committee endeavor. I think this committee is due a response. If that's your response, that's your response. I still would like to know what the status is of this communication. And moving forward, I think the committee is certainly entitled to concern themselves with how we are able to communicate and fulfill our charge. That is not a personal issue. I don't take it personally.
Okay. I've just not had anybody else.
I don't either.
Concern. But that being said, I will try and see, even though it's been a year, there was never a request for a written response in that letter. I mean, is that what you want a written, like, how do you want a response? The action's not enough,
I
or?
would just like to know what the status of the letter is. It's a year old. That's it.
It was addressed and filed.
Hey, it's Jean here. Can I step in here, please?
Well, I would like to also finish a few other things.
Well, I know, but I think we're going down a path that we don't need to right now.
Well, I can actually talk about, now that it's been a year, and now that the city is once again looking at a situation, things have changed with how we as a committee communicate and work through. So if you'd like, I could address that, how we move forward, even in a time of a declared emergency, and even though we do have specific processes set in place. I had a very thorough conversation with my department, and instead of going directly through communications to disseminate something that we as a committee produce, they will simply just be informed that there was a communication, and they'll be given it, but that I will be going directly to council and their aides, such as what we did with the last letter regarding the public safety. If we remember, we did a letter after that to council and council offices, and we did have several, the mayor's office, a couple of council members, I just don't remember right offhand, I can look, but we did get responses back from them, those who chose to respond. So that's moving forward. If we as a committee feel that we need to inform our city council members and our mayor's office, that is how I will handle those communications, is going directly through them and not using the channels that have been given to me to do so. So I see Ernie and Jean.
I think that's helpful. And I would appreciate it if that was recorded in the minutes so that we understand what the lines of communication are moving forward.
Yep, the lines of
is in my
communication are
notes.
good. Thank you, Tom. Yep, the line of communication is the committee will make a decision, a communication mechanism, whether it's a letter, which seems to be what we tend to use, will be approved by the committee addressing an issue concern, and then I will move it forward to whoever the committee has designated should be receiving it. So whether it's city council or mayor's office, whether it's a particular department head, etc., that's what I will be doing. Ernie or Jean, did you still have questions?
Yeah, well, I have, yes. Well, I remember sending this to my city council member, taking the letter because I believe we all got it as an attachment, and I don't think I did it the same day I received it. But again, I reinforced that it just chaos reigned, and they all went home to run their meetings through Zoom, and they had to buy equipment. They had to set up their room away from their dogs and their children and whatever. But I agree wholeheartedly that we are due a response to our letters. I also am noting that the Minneapolis clerk the other day said that there was an agenda for the March 11th regular meeting of the Minneapolis Advisory Committee, which we are, an advisory committee on housing. And I'm wondering why we are not on the Minneapolis clerk's list. Oh, here we are on aging starting at 1 p.m. So we're on that. So we've been identified and we're on that. But yeah, send the letter out again. And those of us that will and want to will send a direct letter to our city council person and say, all right, you're breathing. Whatever you want to say, what did you think about our letter? We haven't received a response.
I think I need to remind folks of what we are and what our role is, and where that fits in the city systems. So as an advisory body, we can advise. We can advise on anything we want. The city council has the right to consider our advisement or to not. They do not have to take our advisement. They do not have to respond to us. So, and that's any committee, that's any board and commission across the city. It's not just ours. It's the advisory committee on people with disabilities, the Latino engagement advisory committee, it's all of them. So as an advisory committee, that is our role. I don't know what you want me to do with the year-old letter as far as resending it out and saying, hey, FYI, this was supposed to go to you a year ago. Not sure if it did. Like, what do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
Like, what are we going to accomplish by doing that? Other than loading up an already very full email box. Given the fact that Derek Chauvin's trial is just beginning.
Well, Paulette, this was yours. Are you satisfied that you got your answer and you know what happened?
It is not my intention. That was not my intention. I just thought, this is a year, we're on the anniversary. This letter did go out, and I'm also aware of the fact that that this committee moved very quickly on the public safety issue, and that moved forward very quickly. I guess I don't think that this letter should be resent. That makes no sense whatsoever. We're a year into the pandemic. We may be facing another fourth wave. We may not. I don't know. But I do think that this committee needs to recognize when communication moves quickly and when it doesn't. And keep in mind that a letter that gets duly noted and filed is not necessarily, has not even reached the two bodies that it was intended for. I hope it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I hope we don't have a situation that we have absolutely no control or ability to respond to in a effective, efficient manner as well. I don't feel that we had a challenge corresponding with the city council or mayor's office before the pandemic and then the subsequent murder of George Floyd. So I apologize, things got wonky and maybe felt loose and not focused. And I'll be the first to say, you're absolutely correct. And that's really all I can do is tell you, you're absolutely correct. And the last thing that I can assure you is we are but one little blip of a lot of things that didn't go well when all the shit hit the fan. So I'll apologize on behalf of the city for any misstep that this committee feels happened during the beginning of the pandemic and the subsequent murder of George Floyd. I know Hazel had her hand up for quite a bit.
I just want to add on to what you said already, like this letter doesn't have a response, and I was just thinking from here on out, any letter that we send, if we can have at the bottom, please acknowledge receipt, of the letter, so that way they can make that, not necessarily they have to respond to it, but just acknowledge that they have received it. So if we can put that on anything that we sent out at the bottom, just acknowledge that they have received it. But I like the idea, Christina, that you're going to be responsible for sending it directly to the people, because when you mentioned earlier, it was going to some central location, and if that person who's ever reading it don't know where it's going to go, it might have gotten lost right there. So I appreciate that you're going to take the time to direct it to the right person. That was my only comment, to make sure that we had that addendum, acknowledgement of receipt of the letter.
Right, thank you. I also want to remind folks that you're here representing your ward and we're appointed by your council member. I think that's awesome, Ernie, that you shared this with your council member. That is a role that we do play. So
right.
I see Jean and Paulette.
First, can you drop the letter so we can see each other's faces?
Sure can.
Okay.
Let's see.
And what I was going to say earlier is we are now calming down this city, even though we've got the trial starting. This city is kind of calming down. Our state and our country is sort of calming down. And I think we are ready to now re-engage, get back on track, and really resume where we were a year ago, right? When it literally was a year ago. So I don't believe that anybody should feel slighted for this past year. And I don't believe anybody was being told they were felt slighted. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think going forward, we as a commission, if you will, or a committee, needs to have an opportunity to take a few minutes and say, this is what's important to me. Can we talk about this? And Paulette, I think your letter should be first on the list. I don't know that we resend it as is. I think we redraft it and say, you know what? We recognize this year happened. We'd like to circle back on this. This remains very important to us. But I think Christina's point is a very good one, which frankly, I did not make this connection. We are advising, and that's key. We should not expect anything from these folks back. And that we do get anything back from them is gravy. The most I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the most that we should get out of this is knowing that our council members and our mayors know our opinions. So I propose going forward, we come prepared to share what issue and topic is important to us. And maybe Paulette, or in this case, last week you could have contacted Christina to get actually on the agenda. So we're prepared to have this conversation. Everybody has read the letter. Going forward, doing the same. If you have a topic you want to talk about, let Christina know, or Ernie, so we can get it on the agenda and really document that so there are no surprises. And I think we just gather up and move forward now. I think it's time to move forward and really start assuming a role that stopped happening a year ago. How's that?
Thank you, Jean. Yeah, and I also want to acknowledge Hazel's recommendation about communications, and then at least having some acknowledgement that it was at least received, knowing that we may or may not get a response. I know that historically we have gotten responses. So I just, yeah. I'm not trying to make an excuse for anyone. I mean, there sure isn't, there's no reason for me to do that. But that being said, this last year was kind of, I don't know. And then this year's like 2.0, 2020 2.0, right? So we just have it a little more together. So yeah, absolutely. And I love that recommendation, Jean. Anyone who wants to have a topic for the agenda, please feel free to send it to me. Definitely a week before our meeting, because I need to, so by public meeting law, I have to have the agenda posted 2 days before our meeting. So I have to have the agenda online by noon Tuesday of the week of our meeting or earlier. Yeah, Ernie?
Hello. And I think we all want to thank Christina for this last year and all of her work on our behalf, and all the places that she went, and the things she handled that we have no even idea. Paulette, I agree with you 100% that we should be getting a response. And as I say, I remember sending it to my city council member. I would like to have added to the agenda next time. Number 7 are the new business and any announcements. We used to have that somewhere in my little brain. Yes, there are things that we come up with at the last moment, and we need to have that on the agenda, that there is any new business or announcements. And we have 3 minutes left. Does anyone want 30 seconds for
I re-
announcement?
Yeah, I just, moving forward, we've asked, or I have asked, and other people have asked too, if it would be possible to hold a joint committee hearing with the advisory committee on disabled, on the disabled. And I'm not really adverse to redrafting the letter if you think it's something that we should do, but it should be redrafted in light of all of the events and the vaccination program that's going forward. But accessibility is a critical issue, and that's what this first letter was drafted, was sent for, was accessibility. So I'm willing to do it, not thrilled about it, but if you think we should do it, I'll try and do it before the next meeting, and we can get it on the agenda.
Please give it, if you have the time and the energy, please do so, and we will look at it. We will put it on the agenda. Thank you very much, Paulette.
You're welcome.
Anyone that wanted 30 seconds besides me? I thought it was very interesting on the news this week. I saw that one community found a nunnery that had never been vaccinated because part of their vows were never to leave the nunnery. So they would have people in, but they never went out. So they had to take they hadn't had flu shots, they hadn't had shingle shots, they hadn't had anything. And they found this group of nuns. I don't know if they're men nuns. I don't know what. Anyway, that had been in isolation. And I think one of the great things that COVID has done is maybe open some of the communities, the government's eyes to groups that are isolated, that need to, be reached out to, because they cannot get out and about.
So
Okay.
before we're done, I just want to put out, I can definitely reach out to figure out how that would look for us and our committee with folks with disability, because they meet at night. So, and I feel like that's intentional. So I'll see what that could look like.
Oh. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
The motion has been made, and we have a second. And thank you all for your day.
All in
your
favor,
time.
say aye.
Oh, all in favor, say aye.
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 Or bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody, great meeting today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay
Cheerio.
safe.
I
Bye-bye.
love your hat, Angelique.
I need this hat.
Oh, I should have had one on myself.
See you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.